You're at a ball game. You've got a hot dog in one hand and your phone in the other. And somewhere over the loudspeaker, a voice asks everyone to please rise. So you stand. And before you've even thought about it, your right hand has already drifted up and settled flat against your chest, right over your heart. You didn't decide to do that. Nobody around you did either. 40,000 people all making the same small motion at the same moment, and not one of them was taught it the way you'd be taught a dance step. So why the heart? Why the right hand specifically? And why this gesture? Not a raised hand, not a bow, not a hat pressed to the chest like in an old photograph. If you've ever wondered how a stadium full of strangers all learned the exact same reflex, you're about to uncover a little piece of history hiding inside everyday life, and it goes much deeper than a simple sign of respect. To understand why your hand goes there, we have to go back, not to 1814 and the rockets over Fort McHenry, like you might guess, but to a schoolroom in 1892. Picture America in the early 1990s. The Civil War was still close enough that plenty of grandparents had lived through it, and the country felt less like one nation than a loose collection of regions that had recently been at each other's throats. Immigrants were arriving by the boatload, and a lot of educators were nervously wondering how you turn millions of newcomers and a still bruised country into something that feels like one people. One answer came from, of all places, a children's magazine. The Youth's Companion was running a campaign to put an American flag in every school in the country, and as part of it, they needed a short patriotic recitation for kids to perform. The man who wrote it was named Francis Bellamy, a former minister with a real gift for cadence. Bellamy gave the country the Pledge of Allegiance, and he didn't just give it words, he gave it a body. We tend to imagine that the way we honor the flag has been fixed since the founders, handed down like a family Bible. It hasn't. The whole ritual, the standing, the facing the flag, the hand, is barely older than the wiring in your walls. And the national anthem you hear at the ballgame, the Star-Spangled Banner, wasn't the official anthem of the United States until 1931, when President Herbert Hoover finally signed it into law. For most of American history, there was no official anthem at all. The thing that feels ancient is younger than your great-grandmother. Now, the gesture Bellamy designed to go with his pledge wasn't the one you do today. It started at the heart, yes, but it didn't stay there. On the signal, school children would place their right hand over the heart, and then, as they spoke the words "to the flag," they would sweep that arm up and out, palm angled toward the flag, and hold it there until the end. For 50 years, that was simply how it was done. Rows of children, arms extended toward the flag, reciting in unison. It had a name, the Bellamy Salute, and to the people doing it, it felt as natural and wholesome as a school bell. And here's where most of us carry a quiet assumption without realizing it. You probably picture Americans always honoring the flag the way we do now, hand calmly resting on the chest. That picture is wrong. For half a century, the standard American salute to the flag was a straight arm, raised and extended. And if you've ever seen a photograph of it, your stomach did a small flip, because by the 1930s, that exact posture had been adopted an ocean away by the fascist movements rising in Italy and Germany. A gesture American children had performed innocently for decades suddenly looked, in a photo, almost identical to the salute of the country's enemies. It got so confusing that pictures of American public figures doing the old Bellamy salute could be cropped and passed around as if they showed support for Hitler. The same motion, two opposite meanings. So, in the middle of the Second World War, Congress quietly fixed it. You might assume they invented a brand new gesture to replace the compromised one. They didn't invent anything. On December 22, 1942, just before the Christmas break, Congress amended the flag code and simply deleted the second half of the salute. They kept the opening position, the hand over the heart, and threw away the outstretched arm that had become impossible to separate from fascism. The gesture you make at the ballgame isn't a new creation. It's the first half of an older one, with the troubling part removed. You're performing a salute that was stopped halfway on purpose. From there, the habit spread the way habits do, through sheer repetition. The tradition of playing the anthem before sporting events had been quietly building since the 1918 World Series, when a military band struck it up during a tense wartime game, and the crowd, almost by instinct, turned toward the flag. Pair that with Cold War classrooms where children performed the new Hand Over Heart pledge every single morning, and within a generation, the motion was wired into tens of millions of Americans before they were old enough to spell allegiance. Which is why, at the ball game, your hand moves on its own. You're not recalling a rule, you're running a reflex that was installed, one morning at a time, by a decision made during a world war. Which raises the obvious question, is any of this actually the law? When you stay slouched with your hands in your pockets, are you technically breaking a rule? You're not. The flag code that describes the hand over heart is suggestive, not enforceable. It tells you what's customary, but there's no penalty attached, and your right to stand however you like is firmly protected. The rule that nearly everyone obeys is, legally speaking, just a polite suggestion. And here's the part most people want to know next. Does everyone do this or just us? Mostly just us. Plenty of countries stand for their anthems, but the specific hand over heart is distinctly American. Visitors tend to notice it right away. To them, it's one of the more curious things Americans do without thinking. And maybe that's the loveliest part of it. That small motion you make without deciding to is muscle memory of the exact moment a country looked in the mirror and decided what it didn't want to look like. So the next time a voice asks you to rise and your hand drifts up to your chest before you've even thought about it, you'll feel it for what it really is. Not an ancient oath, but a quiet course correction from 1942, still living in your own arm. Thank you for watching. If you have ideas for our next video, drop them in the comments below. We'd love to feature your suggestion. And hand on heart, tell us which everyday gesture you do without knowing why. Thanks for joining us for another piece of heirloom history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and come back next time for another piece of history you've been living in without noticing.